Amagi Metals, where financial freedom is yours.
I have coming in from Denver, Colorado, Stephen Macaskill of Amagi Metals, and very excited to have him on for a number of reasons, also including the fact that he's actually in a state where they say they won't harass him or kidnap him just for smoking marijuana, so that's great. And we'll get into a lot of stuff like that, and gold and Bitcoin, a lot of Bitcoin talk. But before we get into all of that, I always have to ask Stephen, how did you become an anarchist?
Yeah, great question. Well, my dad was an anarchist, and he started reading Rothbard in the 60s and 70s. But I think my first encounter as an anarchist came with my first entrepreneurial adventure when I was in the 5th grade and was pretty much damaged by the state. So what happened was I went to school, 5th grade, very young, and I was able to find an entrepreneurial venture. Children loved candy, and I managed to go to bulk food stores and buy candy and sell it to them. And so what I used to sell was warheads, if you've ever heard of those. Really delicious, sour, and I would sell them for 10 cents each, 3 for 25, something like that, and kids would buy them up like crazy. And we would make, I would make between $20 and $40 a day, which isn't that much, but when you're 10 or 11 years old, that adds up. And so it also made me really excited to go to school. Every morning I got to take the candy to school and I got to sell it to the kids. And then at the end of the day, I couldn't wait to get home to count how much money I made, to find out which days I made the most amount of money, to find out what flavors and what candy to get the kids. And also the kids loved it. So one day I was in class and a teacher asked, has somebody been selling food or candy at lunch? And of course it wasn't even me, but everyone knew that I was the guy who sold candy. And so everyone just pointed at me. And so the teacher took me out of the classroom. And, I was 11 years old, something like that. And she got 2 other teachers and an administrator. And they basically intimidated me. They said I can't sell candy anymore. They said if I want to do anything like that in the future, it's going to have to be for a nonprofit. I can't keep any of the money. I have to stop. And it was so disappointing. I went home very sad, and my parents were supportive of me the whole way. They would take me to the store. They would, help me open a bank account, all that stuff. And so they were just furious with the school. And that was my first encounter with the state and first time they shut down my entrepreneurial adventure.
So typical. It's, you're the only productive person in that entire school and they shut you down, and very typical as well, like that they said that you can't have a profit because so many of these public schools or teachers are so communist or socialist, and that's just unbelievable story. I can't believe. First of all, it's great that you started off so young as an entrepreneur and you really got into that kind of stuff, and that's what got you excited about going to school. Probably the only thing that got you excited about going there, and just unbelievable that they shut you down. So did you finish the rest of your indoctrination camp, or did you get out of there at some point realizing what was going on?
Sadly, I did finish, but I didn't really learn that much, in terms of the statism, but I was so happy to finish public schools. I mean, I'm pretty sure that after that event, I just hated school until I got out, and so glad that I'm out.
Yeah, it's funny whenever you watch a graduation ceremony for high school, everyone's so excited because they're out of jail after 12 years of prison. But they don't seem to realize that's why they're so excited. They're like, oh, thank God that's over. That was horrendous. But people don't seem to realize that it's actually, there's no real point of actually going to those places, and some people actually are proud to get a high school diploma, and you always see all the celebrities on TV all admonishing you to get your badge of obedience, and and then they go and they sign up and they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars more for mostly, not all, but a lot of many of those arts degrees are pretty useless. I just saw this one Occupy Wall Street woman, and she was, those memes where they hold up a piece of paper and they write their terrible story, and she's like, is this the American dream I was told about? Because I worked hard. I did my 4 years of women's studies in university, and now I have $150,000 worth of debt, and I can't get a job. And it's like, oh man, these people are so brainwashed. It's sad.
Yeah, it's terrible. And actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I didn't even show up to my graduation day. So.
Well, that's the only good. I actually showed up to mine. I actually graduated too. My story is that I really never went after about grade 10. I actually didn't really want to go even before then, but I figured out ways to get around it and hide. And actually, my mom didn't know until the principal called one day, and he said, he's never here. And she's like, what? Where are you all day? I'm like, I'm on my computer downstairs. I'm building programs and learning stuff. And I did a deal with her where I said, because she said you have to get your high school diploma. Crazy idea. I've never used it. I don't think I even have it. I think maybe they mailed it to me or something. I don't care. But I told her I'll just go for the test. So I'd actually just read the textbook like the morning before the exam, and I'd retain enough information to essentially just get a 50% and pass. And yeah, it's just so funny that so many people think that's important. It's actually I consider it very a bad thing to make your kids do. Now, if your kids want to go to school like that, that's fine, and that's the situation I'm in right now with my two very young children, 7 and 9, and they go to the best private school in Acapulco, which costs about $300 a month, and it's actually like, I wish my school was like that. It's a really, the teachers are so caring and kind, and my kids just love going there, and I keep sort of trying to plant seeds like, hey, if you don't want to go, you don't have to go. You can just, do your own thing and start a business or learn whatever you want to do in your own time.
Exactly.
But they're still quite young, and they just enjoy, it's mostly just playing around in the playground and stuff like that, so they enjoy that part of it. But it's funny because I have some people come up to me and they say, oh, I'm really worried about my son. He's not doing very well in public school. And I always say, well, he's showing a lot of potential because he's not bowing down. He's not, he realized what it is. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, good for him. And it's disappointing because, as I mentioned, my parents are anarchists, but they still encourage me to finish school and complete it. But I don't think I'm ever going to send my children to public schools.
Yeah, I have my wife's an anarchist and I'm an anarchist, obviously, and yeah, definitely never public school. I would not allow that at all. But this private school seems pretty good, and they want to go. And my wife is from the Mexican culture, and she still hasn't totally learnt about things like unschooling, and she thinks it's important that they at least learn how to read and write and some basic math. And so I kind of a deal with her that if they're, and they're actually really good now. They're both. My daughter just got on Facebook the other day, and she's just been messaging me like crazy. I'm like, oh, I didn't know you know how to read and write. And she's like, yeah, of course. So they pretty much know that much already. So I think pretty quickly in the next couple of years we'll get them out of that as well, and see what they want to do.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So let's talk about, well, first of all, let's talk about marijuana legalization. How are you, what's going on in Colorado, and what's your view of that? And also, do you know Joby Weeks?
Know who?
Joby Weeks?
No.
Oh, okay. He was a past guest on Anarchast, and he's a friend of mine, and he was actually the guy who started that legalization process.
Oh.
He was the very first person who went out and signed petitions and got it done.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah. So you owe him a thank you.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction, but there's a huge discrepancy because they have regulated the crap out of the marijuana industry so much that, and that includes 30% tax on marijuana. They have to put RFID chips on every single plant, monitored by the state. When they have to transfer it or transport it, they have to make these assigned routes. And if they have to stop to go to the bathroom for food, or if they break down, they are out of their route and can be arrested immediately. It's absurd. So when you look at medical marijuana, it's something like $180 an ounce, whereas the dispensaries that aren't medical are something like $420 an ounce. So
Just government always just ruining stuff.
It's
Even when they
absurd.
do sort of legalize something, they just destroy it through all their regulations and rules. And yeah, go ahead and light up. I guess it's legal there, so.
It is legal, you know. You can. It's not legal to smoke on the street, but people do it all the time.
Yeah, it's really weird, the whole marijuana thing. Everyone's so wrapped up about, oh my God. I was just in Las Vegas, actually, and you could definitely tell someone on my floor was smoking marijuana, and man, the security guards were just losing their minds. They're like, we have to find this person. It's like, why?
Yeah, it's absurd. So, I mean, yeah, the cool thing here is if you're caught in the street, they just slap your wrist and give you a fine, so.
Oh, they still do that?
Yeah, so only if you're on public property. You can do it on your own property, nobody's gonna care, so.
Okay, so it's just barely legalized then, and it's highly regulated. Is the like street price of marijuana a lot cheaper than what you get from the dispensaries?
Sorry, is the price where?
Is the like the price on the street, like from the
Oh,
black
the
market
price
to
on the
free
street,
market?
from what I understand, is more, but I don't
Okay.
know.
Oh, okay,
But
that's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, so it's still cheaper at the dispensaries, but it's still not as cheap as what the market would allow it.
Oh, definitely, yeah, with the 30% tax, and I'm sure all those regulations add a lot of costs and transportation costs and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I always I laugh and I cry at the same time whenever someone wants to legalize marijuana. They go, "Yeah, like, we should legalize it and then tax it," and it's like, wait, like, why do you want to make things more expensive and just give more money to bureaucrats?
Yeah.
People still think that. Well, I don't know what they think. They think the government is part of them. They're part of the government, and so if the government taxes something, then they're making money somehow. But that's obviously not the case.
Exactly. So.
So when did you start Amagi Metals? And tell us a little bit about it. And I know you accept Bitcoin for gold and silver.
Yeah, so I started, or I actually purchased Amagi Metals in 2010. The company's been around since 2008, and I bought it from a friend who used the company to as a hobby and to pay through his college. And for some reason, he wanted to go into banking. I mean, it was his loss. And for me, I just saw huge potential. I obviously have a background in Austrian economics. A big fan of sound money. My dad was an economist in the 70s and very well known in promoting gold and silver. So it was just a perfect match, and it was my passion. So I joined the company, or purchased the company, and it's been taking off ever since. In 2012, we started accepting Bitcoin. We became the largest Bitcoin retail business in the world.
Wow.
Doing between $1 and $3 million a month in Bitcoin sales. So.
Awesome. I hope you held on to a few of those Bitcoins.
What's that?
I hope you held on to a few of those Bitcoins.
Oh, of course.
Nice.
You know?
That's excellent. Yeah, I've been quite surprised. I shouldn't be surprised, but I've been quite happily surprised that there is quite a bit of demand for precious metals purchases and sales in Bitcoin. I actually just partnered with my coworker. I don't like to use the word worker. The person I work with, Justin O'Connell, and he started goldsilverbitcoin.com, and he's been telling me, and he does essentially the same sort of thing. And he's telling me that there's a tremendous amount of demand, and so I'm really happy to hear that. And that's awesome.
Yeah, the beautiful thing, I mean, it just shows this redistribution of wealth, of all of these Bitcoin enthusiasts are buying gold and silver, and it also shows that they have an understanding of what sound money is, and are advocates of sound money, and they are becoming wealthy from their understanding of that.
Yeah.
So there's a huge redistribution of wealth, and because of Bitcoin, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's totally awesome. And of course, a lot of the anarchists, libertarians, they've always been quite into gold and silver. That was the only real option for non-government money in the past. And those that got in 10 years ago, they did quite well on it, very well. And so many anarchists. Have you ever been to Porkfest?
I'm going this year.
Okay. It's great. I've been going for a few years, and almost everything there you can buy for Bitcoin. You can get Wi-Fi for Bitcoin and food for Bitcoin, anything you want for Bitcoin. So that community, which is almost all anarchists, have really got into Bitcoin for a number of years, and so they're really doing quite well, and it's awesome to see. And it's kind of I kind of have a funny sort of idea. You know the term "the meek will inherit the earth." I actually see us anarchists not as being meek, but we're non-aggressive. We believe in the non-aggression principle, which you could say is I don't know the exact definition of the word meek, but I think us anarchists are going to inherit the world, and I think it's so great that things like gold, silver, and Bitcoin have been doing so well, and they're actually starting to be a lot of anarchists with money. It didn't used to be that way 10 or 20 years ago. There was not a lot of anarchists back then too were all that super entrepreneurial for some reason, but that's really changing too. The idea of being a capitalist, making money, is really caught on in this community, and then they're using gold and silver and Bitcoin in transactions, and those things are going up a lot. Bitcoin obviously it was $35 to start 2013. It's currently around 1,000. So a lot of people have made a lot of money in our community, and it's great, and I think it's going to continue to grow, and I'm really excited. What's your thoughts on Bitcoin right now? It's seems to have been leveled off for the last few months, which is good, and it seems to be just hanging right in there. A lot of people were expecting it to just plummet back to $35, and it hasn't gone anywhere near that. It hit maybe close to $550 for a day, then it was quickly back up to 800. What's your predictions or thoughts on Bitcoin for 2014?
Yeah, well, it really depends. Is Bitcoin like MySpace? Or is it just going to go through a internet bubble? So that's the question. If it's a MySpace, then any other cryptocurrency could be the next Facebook or whatnot. We don't know. And then also looking at, I would not be surprised if there's a drop. I mean, a very large drop for a little bit. I would not be surprised as a correction. I don't know what, if anything, would trigger it, but it would not surprise me. I know everyone says, oh, it's stabilizing, just like when it went up to $100 and then dropped back down to 20. But I think that I wouldn't be surprised if it drops. So. But it may not. Neither one would surprise me.
Yeah, I generally agree. I think, I'm incredibly bullish on it right now. The amount of things I'm seeing, the amount of people and corporations accepting Bitcoin now, it's almost every hour of every day you hear about some other fairly big company that accepts Bitcoin. And of course, the more that it's used and the more it's accepted everywhere, the more it will be used. And the more it's used, that's all supply and demand. And that will drive the value of Bitcoins higher. So it's a very interesting times. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. And let me ask you a question that some people might have. You obviously have some costs in your business that probably your suppliers don't accept Bitcoin. So how do you hedge against, and this is for entrepreneurs out there who want to accept or do accept Bitcoin for their products, how do you hedge against Bitcoin volatility?
Yeah, so what we do is use a payment processing company called BitPay.
Oh, okay.
And they are a great company because what they do is they can convert our Bitcoins directly into dollars at whatever the dollar amount is on checkout. Or they can give us all of it in Bitcoins or a mixture of both. So what we do is we take 1% of Bitcoin and the rest in dollars. And I don't know if I'm sure you realize this, in gold and silver margins are very slim. So we can't take a large portion of our money in Bitcoin just because we have to pay our vendors for the gold and silver. And we're making 1 to 3% on each coin. So we keep that portion, 1% in Bitcoin, and that I guess we put away for a rainy day, whether it goes up or down. That's basically how we do it.
Yeah, that's great. BitPay is great. I've used them before. I use a number of different techniques. I do some fairly large transactions. I have a number of businesses, including I have condos here in Acapulco that we sell. We just sold two for Bitcoin just last month, and same situation. The owner of the property didn't want Bitcoin, so we just negotiated with actually it's almost like a Bitcoin ETF or hedge fund, and they're looking to buy Bitcoin. So the buyer and the seller agreed that on whatever day that we do the transaction, whatever the price of Bitcoin is at that day, that will be the price that gets put through. And so yeah, it's great. And for people who do have a business out there and you're not sure about Bitcoin, I really recommend you look into it and start offering your services in Bitcoin. Especially, there's so many, especially if you, let's say you're in a town, let's say you're in Denver. It's actually not a good example because that's where Amagi Metals is, but say you're in a town that no one's accepting Bitcoin right now. You could come out and say, we're the first company in this town, or the first company of its type to accept Bitcoin, and actually opens up a whole new market to you, because there's a lot of people that are really Bitcoin fanatics, and just they love Bitcoin, and when they hear about a company that accepts it, they'll actually move their business over to you because they want to support you.
Yeah, and it's also kind of tricky because we're working with three different currencies: fiat, gold, and Bitcoin, and they're all fluctuating all the time. But yeah, definitely try and keep some of your, if you decide to use BitPay in Bitcoin, maybe look at other cryptocurrencies and tell people around you, because they will talk about you. If you have a website, they'll post about you, and it all helps, so definitely.
Yeah, that's great. It's really exciting to see what's going on in Bitcoin. And you had mentioned that it's possible that there could be other cryptocurrencies that catch on. Are you paying attention to some other cryptocurrencies, or even accepting them at this moment in time?
I am actually looking at other cryptocurrencies, and I mean, there are a lot of them, and some of them are funny. Some of them make good innovations. So the tricky thing is we've had some issues with our bank accounts. In the past, we had a bank account shut down because we accepted Bitcoin, and we were receiving wires from Mt. Gox, which is an international company. So there are other cryptocurrency processing companies, but they're outside the country. So I think that when we start receiving lots of wires from these banks outside the country, our bank accounts will get shut down again. So basically, regulations are preventing us from accepting other currencies, cryptocurrencies right now.
Yeah, typical, and I hear that a lot. I write a newsletter called the Dollar Vigilante, and we talk a lot about how hard it's getting just to transfer money around in the banking system. There's so many banks, you just try to transfer money and they say, well, what's it for? It's like, you have to explain it and show them documents. It's crazy. And that's, of course, why Bitcoin is so exciting, because if people start to accept that more and more, then we can get out of this horrendous system, which is just getting worse and worse every month now. I think a Russian bank just stopped allowing people to withdraw money from their accounts. There was HSBC in the UK just last week. They started a new policy that if anyone wants to take out, it was kind of like funny how they did it. They said, if anyone wants to take out a large amount of money, we're going to ask them to tell us what it's for. But they never said what the amount of money was. So there was a story of this one guy, and he goes to the bank to get out his money from the bank. And he goes, yeah, I'd like £5,000, please. And they said, no, that's too high. And they said, okay, 4,000. And they're like, no. And he goes, and they said 3,000. And they said, and they gave him like the stink eye. Okay, but what are you going to use it for? You know, like crazy. And it's just going to get worse and worse. So that's why I really hope that people get more and more into Bitcoin, because you're never going to hear the story on the news that the Bitcoin bank has stopped allowing withdrawals. You know, it's not possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's and I really recommend for people who don't know about the Dollar Vigilante, you should check it out. It's just dollarvigilante.com. I write a blog there every day, and we cover a lot of these issues. And I really think 2014 is going to be quite a wild and crazy year in the banking and financial and political systems. And if you're not prepared for it, check out Dollar Vigilante. We talk a lot about solutions and ways to prepare for what I see as the coming collapse of the monetary and financial system. So it's going to be very interesting times, and that's also a very good reason to own precious metals, because Janet Yellen or Ben Bernanke can't counterfeit those out of existence like they're going to do with the dollar. And so definitely check out Amagi Metals. I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to talk about, Stephen, but if not, tell people how to get to Amagi Metals and anything else you'd like to say.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. If anyone has any or wants any information or has more questions about Bitcoins or precious metals, just visit our website at www.amagimetals.com. And if you have Bitcoins, come and buy some gold. And next month is actually the 4th year that I've run Amagi Metals. So we're doing an anniversary bash, I guess, and have a lot of silver products on sale this month, so check us out.
That's great. Yeah, pick up some silver. It's pretty cheap right now, as is gold, in my opinion. I think those are going to go a lot higher this year, but we'll see what happens. So that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace.